Hi, good evening, everyone. I hope everyone's doing well. I'm not sure if we'll get a lot of people because some groups might be rushing to beat the 11:59 deadlines. But somehow, there's been a few submissions already, which is good for both classes. That's good. No? You don't have to cram all the time. Can you hear me properly, guys? Can anyone confirm, please? All right, that's good. All right. So let's wait for a minute or two, but I'll start at 6:02 because it might be a long. I guess we'll end by 8. No, might be another long session to cover everything, including module 5, because there's one final discussion board there, and would be useful for you to listen to get tips for the discussion board as well. So I will be sharing now my screen. Laser pointer. Okay, I'll start now because it's a long it's going to be a long session. Again, bear with me for this session. It might be info overload, but just tell me if I'm going too fast. I'll try to finish. We'll try to finish everything, including module 5, um, this evening because it's the last session. And if okay with you guys, we'll do a class picture at the end, screenshot. So I hope more people will be joining us later on. But I understand, no? Again, this is being recorded in case your classmates aren't able to attend and they're rushing for the deadline. So we'll first cover Module 4. Um, just announcements of Module 5 as last module. If you've seen it already, it's a very short module, 3 pages, actually 2, with one final discussion board. And because Module 4 was really long. So remember, online participation accounts for 20% of your grade. So, and I'll close all discussion boards. So I haven't closed any discussion boards. So feel free to revisit discussion boards from Module 1 all the way to Module 4 and 5 until October 31. So please post. Uh, After that, I'll close it, and your participation will account for 20%, and mostly using the discussion boards. Okay, so deadline is tonight. As I mentioned, I've seen some groups already have submitted, which is good. Thank you. Please answer the poll, no, by by tonight as well. No, so I will still decide. No, so before I wasn't really inclined to do peer rating, no, but I really gotten some feedback. No, um, my initial idea was, deal with it. You're adults, as should be. Because in the real world, in the corporate world, for example, you don't you can't, you should not complain to your boss. Oh, my group mates are not, participating. But so I was torn between that and fairness. No? So I'm now more inclined um, to do peer rating. And so far, majority of those who answered, I think 13 responded. Majority have said yes, they want peer rating. So I might just do that. So that will account for, I haven't decided yet, maybe 20% of your grade. So, but bottom line for this assignment, for your final output, try to contribute as much as you can, I mean, don't slack off. So I really I wanted to treat you guys as adults and deal with it yourselves, but I've seen some feedback. So for the sake of fairness, I will most likely, I'll announce that if ever I do peer rating, I'll announce that. So and I will require everyone to answer it, to grade yourself and your peers, no? Because if not, then I will assume your grade, your self rating will be a zero. So I'll announce that maybe by tomorrow after the deadline. So reminder, no, for anything, for any group work, don't slack off. We're all adults, so I really wanted to treat you like adults. But to be fair, sige, let's do peer rating. And the final output. No, so again, your NSTP instructors have provided you guidelines for that in case, no, in case lang. Because even though you're in one class, no, you have different NSTP formators. So in case lang, they haven't provided more detailed formatting guidelines. You know me, I feel free to use any format as long as it follows the outline. It covers all in the outline. It should not exceed 10 pages, singular, double space. I prefer AP style for citations, but I will not be super strict. By the way, the 10 pages are exclusive of citations, so you can go, you can have an extra page for your citations. Same font as assignment one for me. But again, if your NSTP formators have provided more specific formatting guidelines, I will defer to them. They trump me. So follow them. If not, then follow this. Okay, because you have different NSTP instructors. All right. So you probably have gotten this, no, by email this week. You're invited to do an evaluation online. Evaluate me as well as the course and all your other faculty, your professors as well. It's open this week until Saturday, I guess. And I strongly encourage all of you to complete the evaluation. Gusto nyo, ganti kayo sa akin. But honestly, I do welcome feedback, and especially if it's constructive. So if you think, yeah, again, you can mention it's too long, etc., too much work. So that will help me also and other faculty members for when we teach. I'm planning to teach this again next sem, so it will help me also in the next semester. So fill that out in ISIS. So just in case, no, post SocSci 13, you're really interested in development work and want to keep in touch, someone already from the other class kept in touch. No? And they're really interested. They're asking for tips. I can be a mentor. So feel free to keep in touch after this post if you're really interested in development or in this line of in this sector. All right. So module 4, we'll finish module 4 today and start and finish module 5 as well. So we'll just finish public finance and taxation for the first part, just quickly, and then do population demography and MSME development and entrepreneurship. So those two last topics for module 4 are 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 are, um, are very very short. All right. So just to finish, no, we didn't have time to go through this last time. So for public finance, we studied both revenue collection side, as well as spending side. So for both, no, for both revenue generating, let's say taxation, and both spending, they can be deliberate, they can be intentional to achieve specific things. So, for example, on the revenue side, on taxation side, they can actually structure tax rates to disincentivize behavior. So that's one. So So they can both incentivize or disincentivize behavior. So for example, the syntaxes, no? And for the group that's tackling train, there was a portion there dealing with taxes, higher taxes on sugary beverages. So that's good, no? So at the same time, revenue can collect more taxes. In taxes, that's alcohol and tobacco, no? So that's good. Before kasi, cigarettes were very, very cheap, no? So they saw scope for actually increasing the price by putting more taxes. So the good thing is it's more expensive now. It tries to disincentivize smoking or drinking a lot. And at the same time, if, if people continue to patronize them, government gets more revenues. And actually what government did was the revenues they collect from the higher taxes in alcohol and tobacco products went to PhilHealth to subsidize public health programs. Sugar taxes, same thing. That's what they're planning. So it tries to disincentivize behavior and at the same time, a bad behavior, and at the same time, collect revenues. Uh, in other countries, you know, the taxes for cigarettes are much higher. So, for example, I have uh, I have a cousin in Australia. Each time they visit the Philippines, no, he buys at least one rim, no, because there one pack is $20 because the taxes are. So on the flip side, sometimes tax rates are structured so they can incentivize behavior. Usually, these are what we call fiscal incentives. For the group that's tackling the create bill, this is very relevant. So sometimes, certain areas, no, they have economic zones or they want to entice more investors, either domestic investors or foreign investors to invest in their cities. What they will do is, oh, I charge other corporations 30%. Pero kayo, if you're employing a lot of people, you're introducing technology, well and good. I will grant you tax holidays, meaning no taxes. You don't have to pay taxes for the first 5 years and 5% after that. Versus others who are charged 30% corporate income tax rate. So that can incentivize behavior in the sense that incentivize investment. So that's one. So on the revenue side, taxes can be structured in such a way to either disincentivize behavior or incentivize behavior. On the spending side, uh, it can also be used as a tool for something. So usually, fiscal policy. Remember, the term fiscal can be used to either mean revenue generation or spending or saving, not spending, the flip side of spending. So fiscal policy usually is when governments use it, it's usually this, spending. So usually it's used when the economy is in a slump, when the economy is going down, when the pie is growing bigger. Usually, uh, the policy prescription is, government should keep spending. That's why Keynes, no, especially in crisis, when GDP is going down, Keynes was a strong advocate for, no, pump the economy with more money. Ito nga, he was famous for saying, oh, the government should pay people to dig holes in the ground and then fill them up, even if they're not broken. You might see, ano yun, waste of money. Pero he was seeing it from the perspective that when you do this, you pay people to dig the hole. You also pay people to fill up the hole. And the people who earn money from doing that, no, that's the concept of multiplier effect. Will get money and then they will use that money to buy things. And then, they buy from a shop, the shop uh, gets more money. They can probably, when they expand, they can hire more workers. So it creates a multiplier effect in the economy because you spend and then others benefit. The economy benefits because that creates a virtuous cycle. So that's the idea of fiscal policy, pumping the economy with money in cases where it's in a slump, because that creates a multiplier effect. You give several people, significant proportion of people with money, that will stimulate the economy because they will be spending. They will not give money to each other lang, no? They will buy things. And that benefits the shops, that benefits businesses, creates a virtuous cycle. And the businesses might be able to pay more workers because they're having a good business, no? They're in a good standing. But the problem is this pandemic is a different case, you know. So that's why people are saying, no, even if you give people money, that's not gonna have a lot of impact. It will have some impact, but not a lot because this is different. The pandemic is different because like the ayuda, di ba? You're familiar with SAP siguro, no? The poor people were given financial aid up to 8,000, I think, in Metro Manila. But the problem is they won't just go out, go to the mall, spend, you know, they can't do that in the pandemic because there's consumer fear, fear of going out. Of course, they will still spend, no? Groceries, basic necessities. So there are limits. No? Kasi the pandemic is it's not like other crises. So there is minimal impact of any stimulus, any fiscal stimulus. But still, again, people are still saying, you know, regardless, if the economy is in a slump, it's always good for governments to pump, pump the economy with money, give people money, provide support to businesses, etc. That's always good. So that's fiscal policy. Now let's go to debt. You see this, no? You see in the news. If you're following the news, oh, grabe na, the debt of the outstanding debt of debt of the government is really high. Ano ba yan? So my question to you, and please answer, no? Anyone, uh, what do you think of this? Is debt bad? A country has to borrow kasi nga, there's a shortfall. The only reason you borrow is there's a shortfall. Is debt bad? Are loans bad for a country? Or do you see this picture, 9 trillion? Is that bad or good? Anyone? Is that bad or good?
Sir, uh, I think it
I see Virgo.
depends.
Yes. But
Uh, I
okay.
think I think debt is just bad if we don't have the capacity to pay it back. But ayun nga, debt is not really bad at first, like in the long run. But at first glance, a bigger debt might like scare people na parang, oh, we're in such big debt. But if we have the ability naman to pay it back, then I guess it's fine.
Anyone disagrees? Okay. Very good point. Actually, and I will discuss that. And then I totally agree with you. So it's not bad as long as you can pay for it. And I'll go through a very simple example that you can use as an analogy for a country. And this was also in your Canvas course, in one of the pages. That's why I call it demystifying debt. Debt is not necessarily bad. It can be, but inherently it's not. It becomes bad if you don't, one, if you don't use it for productive uses. So if you use the analogy of a family, no? If the father, there's a shortfall, uh, classic example, no? Borrows money pero ends up just using it to for alcohol or to drink with the neighbors or throw a party. That's not good. Kasi wala nang ang pera and then you end up borrowing. Or for a country, if you invest in social services or in income generating things like infrastructure, diba? We studied last time, it facilitates economic activity, therefore it's good. Kasi nga it's an investment. So ito, simple analogy, no? Think of this Mario and Mario. You can also think of them as countries. No? There's a chat. Let me open the chat. Or doesn't want to work. Wait. Uh, sorry. There. Okay. Depends, sir. Exactly. No. So sorry. You just saw the chat box now. Yeah. Sometimes again. Depende kung saan po ginagamit. Exactly. So it depends. No? If it's for a productive use, yes. And the other, on the flip side, you can't just keep borrowing. No, it becomes bad if you're not able to manage it. If it becomes too much of a burden. So ito, si Mario and Maria. So for example, no, they get a 120,000 peso loan from the bank. They were granted. To simplify things, no interest. Of course, that's impossible. Pero just assume, no interest. Payable in 1 year. So basically, every month, they should pay 10,000 to the bank. Kasi 120,000, 12 months to pay. 10,000 per month, no? Yung loan. So the salary per month, let's say, for example, si Mario, kasi sabi nila, women daw earn more or can earn more, mas masipag daw. In general, I think I agree with that. So si Mario earns 15,000 only. Si Maria earns 100,000 a month. So who has a harder time paying? Obviously, it's Mario. So you can compute it as debt to income. No? So for Mario, debt per month represents 2/3 of his salary. So mabigat. No? He's left with 5,000. Si Maria naman, she's left with 90,000 because it only represents 10%. So okay lang. So when you go back to this, and this is true for any sector, finance, development, economics, you don't just look at the absolute number. This doesn't mean anything, to be honest with you. The 9 trillion, 9.054 trillion doesn't mean anything. It will only mean anything, whether it's good, bad, manageable or not, if you compare it with the income country. So now, let's go to the country now. Kasi ito, it's an analogy. Think of Mario and Maria's countries. And you have to compare it with the country's income. Diba? So that again is in social science, no? You always have to parang poverty, no? Yes, it's good to see how many people are poor, pero you have to kaya nga poverty rate, poverty incidence kasi in most indicators it's useful to compare it with the general population or something to compare it to. I don't know when you guys are going to study finance. Kami kasi before third year, no, when I was doing MECO. So I don't know for you guys. Maybe you're studying it now. Even finance, no, revenues don't mean a thing. Kaya may ratios kayo, no? You'll be studying financial ratios eventually. You have to compare it with something else, whether it's good or bad, high or low. So for a country, the income is GDP. It's the pie. GDP can either be your total economic output or total income. So when you're assessing whether the debt is manageable for a country, whether it's good or bad, assess it against the GDP. Our GDP now is really high. Here, this is from Secretary Dominguez. These are official figures. No? So dito, di ba, meron kang debt to income ratio for Mario and Maria. Ito, same thing. Again, GDP is the income. So we're actually doing well. We have been doing well. It's been going down because we've been actually not borrowing less. We're actually borrowing more. But we're actually growing more. The pie has been growing a lot bigger. And we're earning more revenues. We're spending more actually. So ito, the red bars actually here are preliminary estimates before mind you, before COVID. This will shoot up in 2020. So don't pay attention to this because definitely this will go up. So the last actual rate was this. So manageable. Kasi if you ask the experts, no, the observers, uh, if it's below 60, below 50 is actually very, very good. Below 60 is still manageable. When you hit almost 70, mga two-thirds, 66%, parang si Mario, then it becomes a bit problematic. So tayo, we're in a good position. Pero this will go up, especially now during the pandemic. I think now we're approaching 50 or more of GDP. But we're still in a good shape, less than 60%, if you ask the economic managers. So again, debt is okay as long as you use it productively, as you guys mentioned, and if you're in a good position to pay it off. So that's why I call it demystifying debt. You'll hear a lot of people say, grabe, no? The debt is so high. No, it's not the figure. It's the figure relative to what? Yung US nga, for example, and even Singapore, their debt to GDP ratios are actually more than 100%, meaning their debt are actually higher than their incomes. Pero people like them, so institutions still let them borrow. So, tayo, we're in a good shape. And what's actually a good measure for it? They have this thing called credit rating or credit score. So for a country, you have there are three major credit rating agencies: Standard and Poor, Fitch, Moody's. So every year, all of the countries, they rate the credit rating. Basically, the higher your credit rating is, the better off you are in terms of managing your debt. It's a signal to your creditors. If you have a high credit rating, it's a signal saying that, no, let them borrow kasi the risk of default, the risk of them not being able to pay back the loans they borrow is very low. And that can be, a credit rating can be given not just to countries, even to corporations and even individuals. You know, in most advanced countries, when you go to the bank or when you apply for a credit card, they will actually give you a credit rating. Dito kasi hindi. It's anong collateral mo? What's your collateral? We actually studied that briefly last time. Sa other countries and soon, no, there's an agency that's trying to evolve the way banks borrow into credit scoring. So in the US, no, I lived in the US for a while. I applied for a credit card based on your past history. Have you defaulted on your cell phone payments? If you're in a plan, have you defaulted in your past loans? If not, then your credit rating is good. So the likelihood of you being granted a loan is high. Because if your credit rating is low, they will say no, or they will say yes, but you have to pay higher interest rates. Kasi nga, mas risky ka. So why will we let you borrow cheaper? No, we will let you borrow, pero you will pay higher interest rates. So in the case of the good thing is we have been having higher credit ratings, and right now we are at the highest, which means it's a signal that we can manage. And I included a DOF Facebook post. No? That's a very simplified way of explaining it in Canvas. So right now we're really in a good spot, really the highest ever in history, which means we can really manage our debt, no risk of default. So again, debt is not, that's why I call this portion demystifying that it's not so much the figure. It's whether you can pay it back eventually. Because debt is needed sometimes. Again, going back, no? And I put this in Canvas, no? If loans were bad, a lot of your parents would not have been able to afford a house or a car. Kasi kung walang loans, then the car companies will say, oh, you paid that car upfront, 1 million, I need 1 million. Who can afford just paying 1 million? Some of your parents, yes. But usually you get a loan. Kasi eventually you can pay it back. No? So again, it's not bad as long as you can pay it back. And hopefully you use it productively. So that's how we end the finance uh, session. So I won't stop. No? I'll just continue unless I see someone who has in the chat box who has a question. So I don't see any questions. So, all right. Next topic, population and demography. All right. So Malthusian, we started with this. No? Before kasi they were scared. This was in the 19th century. There was a guy named, forgot the last name, si Malthus. Came up with a theory. He was an alarmist. Sabi, no, grabe na, we're growing so big. We might reach a point where the production of food, no, will be starving. Production of food is linear, no, algebraic, pero population growth is exponential. So we might reach a point where the population will outstrip our capacity to feed ourselves. Where that has largely been debunked. Because of technological progress, food is actually plenty. The problem is not the supply of food per se, but it's really the distribution. More people, kaya nga may buffet, di ba? Usually there's a lot of food. Pero there's a lot of people starving too because it's a function of affordability. We talked about food security, people having access, etc., etc. So it's a distribution issue as well. So it's not really a population issue. So this is one of the most important concepts that has been debunked when we're talking about population. So just like that, population is not, again, the figure, we are 109 right now. It's not so much whether, it's too big. No, it's whether we can manage. So we'll discuss it in terms of a country as a whole and also as a family unit. It doesn't matter if you're 10 or 20. What matters is if that family can manage. So same thing with the country. It doesn't matter if you're 200 million, 100 million. Indonesia has 200 million. States has 400 million. Other countries are smaller. It doesn't matter what the absolute figure, just like that. It's whether you can manage it. So we're now 109 million. No? I won't click this anymore. Yung Commission on Population website, they have a real-time estimate of the population. So per second, they keep adding children. So based on past census. So I included a Canvas, a page in Canvas, linking it to the 2017 Population Management Plan of the Philippines. Some data are outdated, so just remember that. But the trends are generally the same. So the growth rate, which is good, population growth rate has been declining. So really good. So not too much. So the most populous regions are here in Luzon. So NCR and the surrounding regions, Central Luzon and Calabar Zone. So that's Batangas, Laguna. Central Luzon, that's Bulacan, Baysiha, Pampanga as well. And just to update the document, the 2017 Population Management Plan, more than 50% are already residing in urban areas. So we're now an urbanized country. We have stats for that. And you see this, and this is a key trend. Later on, we'll discuss this more. Generally, we're a young population. We have more people here, below 60, below the bulk of the population are here, younger population. And the trends say, roughly 20% are youth, 15 to 30 ang youth. So roughly 20% of the population. And A third actually are below 15 years old. And more than 60% are working age, defined as those age 15 up to 59 years. So just for additional information, there's a census of population and housing that's done every 10 years. That's mandated by law. Pero they usually have what they call a mid-decade census. So now the trend is they do it also every 5 years. So dati kasi 98, 1980, 1990, 2000. So ngayon, they started doing it every 5 years na. So in between the mandated, the mandatory required census years, every 5 years na. So they can update the projections. All right. And we just saw, no, majority of the population is in the labor force, working age. And there's a significant share of young people, youth, no, 20%. When you talk about population, especially in the Philippines, they always talk about this term, demographic dividend. So what is that demographic dividend? In simple terms, and this is defined by NEDA also, it's the economic benefits that would result in changes in a country's population stock. So there are three general phases. One is mortality and fertility rates go down. So basically, when fertility rates go down, that's actually good kasi, which means there are more people capable of working. So less dependence. More people are able to be productive, contribute something to the economy rather than more babies that need to be fed, that are dependent. Kasi the issue really of population boils down to dependency. You want uh, you want less dependence rather than more dependence. Kasi that puts pressure on the workers, that puts pressure on a lot of government services, etc. So this is good. No? So we're past this. In theory, dependency ratio, we discussed this actually on a household level when we talked about the income and non-income indicator. So it's good. So by default, no, when you have a large workforce, it's more than 60% now in the Philippines, age 15 to 60. By default, dependency ratio goes down kasi you have a lot of people that can work. But we'll go back to that later on. That's the crux. It's good actually kasi you have, you know, more people. They're not necessarily, they don't need to be fed, or they're not dependent on government or on the working class people. So a lot of potentially productive. So I emphasize potentially because it's not always the case. Then eventually, if you have a large workforce, they become productive. That boosts economic growth. Kasi nga, less dependence nga. Fertility rates go down. So it's a boot, no? Because less pressure on the workers, they can be more productive. Government, there's less pressure, no? Kasi less dependence, less pressure on government services kasi can afford na in general yung population. So a boon for government services. So virtue cycle, no? Virtue circle. No? Again, sabi nga natin multiplier effect. More workers that are working productive. That's good for businesses kasi the people earning money can support the businesses. The businesses, if they are successful, they can expand, hire more workers from the working class. The money circulates. Multiplier effect. But that's not always the case. Kasi in theory nga, no? When you have a large workforce, you have less dependence. Pero what if a significant portion of that labor force are actually not productive? Kasi maximizing the dividend, the benefits, requires that, you know, that 60%, most of it are productive. Pero what does the data tell us? Not necessarily. a lot of the youth who can be employed are actually not employed. So the country has problems with employing the youth. In past statistics, actually, youth unemployment is actually twice, more than twice, the unemployment rate. Some of you have actually uh, cited this in assignment one. No? Kasi in the past, no? Forget 2020. 2020 is a different ballgame kasi talagang unemployment rates shot up. But in the past, our unemployment rates were hovering in 5-6% lang. So a bit low. But the youth unemployment were actually more than double. So instead of them becoming not dependents, being productive, they're not. They actually become dependents themselves. Kasi, ano pa, who's gonna feed them? If they're not unemployed, they will aasa lang sa parents or the government. And what's worse, it's not just they're not employed. Data show that 22%, more than 1 out of 5 of youth were unemployed, were not employed, not going to school, or not in training. So not dependent. I don't want to use the term independent. So not dependent lang currently kasi they're not employed. Pero in the future, if they stop schooling or if they're not being trained, what kind of productivity will they have? They will also face difficulties finding a good job kasi nga they stop schooling. So either in the present, they're not productive, or in the future, they will not be productive. So ultimately, if a significant part of your workforce is actually not productive, in effect, the dependency rate goes up. Kasi in theory, dapat that 60% working age are no longer dependents. Pero if a sizable chunk are actually not productive and they end up becoming dependents themselves. So effectively, the dependency rate goes up. Effectively, in theory, no. Pero effectively. Kasi productive sila. I see a chat. Okay. Yes, Gail. No worries. No worries. After the session. So yeah, that's 4.4 million. So again, yun nga, sabi nila, no, you saw the initial article from UANP, famous professor, really well regarded in the economic uh, sphere. No? Pero again, the assumption is, kasi akala nila, yeah, you produce more workers. It's not the be all and end all. It doesn't matter if majority of the people are working age. What matters if they're working or they're productive at present or in the future. So dependency. That's on a country level. Let's do micro now. So again, just like that, no, population is it doesn't matter whether what the actual figure is. What matters is whether it can be managed. Ito, this is a worrying statistic, and this is true for in many countries. No? The poorer, ironically, those who have fewer resources have larger family sizes. Diba? So those who have fewer resources have more mouths to feed. So the poor, tingnan nyo. So if you divide it by income class, the poorer ones have, on average, no, almost 4 kids on average. Then it tapers off as, you have richer folks. So those who actually can afford up to, kasi usually they're more educated, up to have fewer family sizes to make it more manageable. Pero the poorer ones naman, those who can't afford, actually have more kids. And on the flip side, kaya, if you compute it, the dependency ratio is much, much, much higher. Kasi nga, yeah, they can't afford. In rural areas especially, some of them actually intentionally have more kids to help out in the funds. In the urban areas, iba-iba. No? So for the group studying or tackling the RH Act or bill, yeah, that's useful. No? Kasi some advocates are arguing, actually, it's actually, they don't want more kids, pero they don't have access to family planning methods. Some people are saying that. And and on that topic, actually, another key concept when you're talking about population and demography. Demography lang naman is basically population trends and statistics. The fancy term for population studies. Is what we call actual and desired fertility. And that is very important when we're talking about population. Kasi fertility lang naman is basically the number of children. The number of children you bear. So good, no? So far it's been going down. Ito lang naman, this is a survey, the National Demographic and Health Survey. So it's been going down. So the last time on record, it was 3. So 3 kids. So that's good relative to his historical. But it's important to understand, no? And they also ask in the surveys, no? So what's the actual? They compare the actual fertility rates versus what people really want, the desired or the wanted fertility rates. And this is actually very surprising, very important, interesting. So on average, punta na tayo sa total. On average, the actual fertility rates is 3. 3 kids are born. Pero if you do the average, if you ask people, ask couples, all they really want are just 2 on average. You can have 2.2 kids, no? 2 kids and a head. So round down natin to 2. So that's 1. So there's a gap. So if you study government's policy now, it's not necessarily controlling population, not controlling the number of children, the fertility rate, but rather the policy, especially for you guys tackling the RH law, the policies actually to support the achievement of desired family sizes. To support this, kasi they're saying, why is there a gap between the actual and the desired? Kasi baka mamaya, they don't have access to family planning, the right family planning commodities or know-how or methods. Pero see, interesting, no? Even at the desired, no, family, it's still high for those who are poorer. Yung quintile lang naman is they cut up the population into 20 percentile groups. So quintile is 20%, divided into 5. So the poorest 20%, 3 kids, pero they end up having 5. So yun nga, the people who don't have much resources, they end up having more kids. So you go to more richer folks, they don't want a lot of children. They end up not having a lot of children, perhaps because they have access to family planning methods, commodities, etc. And that's highly correlated with level of education. Because usually the poorer ones have lower educational attainments. So again, it's not the point, I think, for government in the past and the present. It's not so much controlling the population. It's supporting, kasi people nga actually want lower fertility rates. But they end up, because of different reasons, and chiefly the advocates are saying kulang sa access and know-how, they end up having more kids than what they want. On the macro level, again, it's how do you manage? Can you manage? So yun nga, they're saying, studies have shown rapid population growth impedes economic growth. This has been proven empirically. On average, it decelerates. It leads to a deceleration of the pie getting bigger. Kasi nga, instead of you, let's say a family or businesses or government devoting resources into more productive uses, they end up uh, earmarking resources for for the dependents, more school services, health services, kasi ang daming dependents, they can't fend for themselves. And the rapid growth puts pressure on employment. Sabi nga nila, every year we keep adding more than 1 million to the labor force. Those people find jobs. And if they're not productive, going back to the demographic dividend, if they're not educated well, they didn't finish school, they're not trained well by TESDA, what will happen? So you have a lot of unemployed. Kasi rapid population growth puts pressure. You keep adding eventually to the labor force. And as I mentioned, it puts pressure on social services. The more people, kasi kita nyo nga, you saw that for yourselves in one of the slides last week. The lion's share of the government budget goes to education, pero it's still not enough. You see the quality of teachers, the quality of the school buildings, etc., etc. And lastly, food security. Diba? More people, more mouths to feed. So that puts pressure on food security, whether it's us producing it or importing. Pressure on food availability and access. And this is part of one of the discussion boards. There's actually a worrying issue: teenage pregnancy. Ito nga, very shocking statistics. I mean, every week, about 40 to 50 Filipino children aged 10 to 14 years old give birth. E paano kung twins pa? So that drives up the numbers. That's only 10 to 14. Huh? What about the 15 to 19? There are also more. So imagine there's at least 100 kids being born. What's the problem with that? Kasi na nga, these are dependents, the 10 to 14 years old, and they give birth to dependents. So you duplicate, you reinforce dependency. That becomes problem. Okay lang sana if the family is rich, but that adds burden. The dependents bear dependence. Before we close this, just what are the government thrusts? This is in the PPMP, the Philippine Population Management Plan program, medium term. So aligned with the PDP, as we kept mentioning, government wants to support, not control, but support couples, parents, achieve their desired number of kids, their desired family size. So I won't belabor the point. I might be helping the RH group in case they haven't turned in their assignment yet or still cramming. Ito, unintended pregnancies, teenage pregnancies. That's becoming an issue kasi. My organization, USAID, this actually has a lot of projects on that, helping out address teenage pregnancies. And this is just for government, basically. All the different relevant stakeholders, government, non-government, to do their part, especially the local government. Kasi health services actually is the responsibility of local governments chiefly. So that includes reproductive family planning services. So yeah, that's a very short module, sub-module, the population and demography. I don't see any questions, so I will proceed with the last one in module 4. MSME development and entrepreneurship. Okay, So what's the point? Why are we talking about micro, small, and medium enterprises? Ito lang, just a cheat sheet. I included it as a footer. Sorry, I'm not good at layouting. So bear with me. My wife is good. So hindi na ako nagpatulong. Ako, I'm really bad at formatting stuff. So, kaya sabog sometimes. So bear with me. So, yeah, why does it matter? Why are we even talking about this entrepreneurship? Kayo, kasi eventually, it's relevant for you kasi eventually you will be joining firms or you will be founding or creating your own startups or firms. Especially next year, kayo, no, JG Song, you'll be creating your own micro, most likely micro enterprises. Kasi yung group nyo naman will be less than 10. Because micro, small, and medium enterprises account for 99.5% of all registered businesses. Most of the firms in the country are micro, small, and medium, with almost 90% micro. When you think of micro, to simplify things, that's your sari-sari stores, that's your barber shops, laundromats, small standalone restaurants. That's micro. Small. Small naman, yeah. Mga restaurants that are a bit bigger than micro. Medium naman, small hotels, etc. Kasi nga, 100 to 199 employees. So small businesses account for roughly 10.5%. 1 out of 10 businesses. Pero micro talaga takes the lion's share. But actually, even though they represent 99.5, almost all businesses, they only generate, they only employ 63% of total employees. Ito, tingnan nyo, large businesses. Kaya nga, sometimes government also wants to incentivize large businesses kasi the large businesses, by default, they employ a lot of people. Kahit isa lang, they will employ more than 200 people. So tingnan nyo, in terms of total employment, the large firms represent only less than 0.5% of all firms, but they employ 36%. Diba? So malaki. And in terms of contribution to GDP, this 99.5% of firms only account for 37% of total economy. So mababa. So pababa na pababa. And the World Bank has been saying, they represent the majority or almost all. Pero their productivity, so they only account for this. Mababa ang productivity, their economic output. You go to neighboring countries, mababa. 5% of the high-income countries, the productivity. Kasi nga, most MSMEs, they cater into low productivity services. The sari-sari stores, that doesn't produce a lot. Kasi buy and sell, they buy bulk, they sell. Not a lot of output. Majority really of MSMEs are wholesale and retail. So a lot of the jobs are really informal, and very vulnerable to poverty. So again, think sari-sari store or small mom and pop stores, small restaurants, small services like barbershops, massage parlors, etc. Very informal and vulnerable to poverty. Very blue-collar labor. Walang masyadong innovation, high-tech. So, for the most part, very, very low productivity. And we want to boost productivity. So now we analyze, why are we here? Why are the firms only producing much? They can be more productive. Bakit? Why can't they do more, produce more, evolve, be larger, have a larger output? What are the barriers to realizing their potential? So number one, really, kaya I put it in exclamation point, access to finance. And the group that's tackling the Magna Carta on MSMEs or SMEs, that's kind of obvious there. That's number one. It's hard if you're a small business. Mga San Miguel, Ayala, it's easy. They go to a bank. it's easy for them to actually get money, to borrow money. Pero if you're a small business, it's kind of tough. First thing they ask, oh, do you have collateral? If you don't have collateral, maybe not. So it's really hard. Second, really, is government bureaucracy. There's a concept called cost of doing business or the business environment. If you're really interested, the World Bank has an annual report called Doing Business. They basically measure to what extent does government regulations put a lot of burden to firms. Kasi, for example, just for your information, if you want to start a business, a formal business, you have to get permits from both the national government, yung SEC or or DTI, and also the local government, mga LGUs. Sa QC, for example, I live in QC, you have to line up. You go to City Hall. And it becomes a burden. Kaya cost of doing business because there are what we call transactions cost. It takes time and money just to comply with government rules before you're able to start a business. And annually, you have to renew permits to continue operating. And tayo in the Philippines, we're really bad at this. If you check out the Doing Business report, in general, we're okay. We're in the middle in terms of ranking compared to other countries. Pero in terms of permitting processes, we're really last 10 out of 180 countries the last time I checked. So we're really doing a bad job. And that's bad, no? Kasi nga, the large firms, they have people, okay lang. If there's bureaucracy, they have people that can line up for them. May utusan sila. But what about the 99.5% of firms? The sari-sari store vendors, or let's say the small barber shops, they don't have people. Will they pay money just for people to ano? Sometimes they do. Pero yun nga, sayang. The cost of the cost of hiring someone just to do the paperwork could have been devoted sana. Number one dito, by the way, is Valenzuela. Magaling, Valenzuela City. You can get your permit online. You can apply and pay online in 1 minute. Galing. For you guys interested in models, Valenzuela is a good model for that. Access to market, that means just access to buyers. No? Sometimes you have a good product, pero you need help, you don't know how to sell properly. Oh, sasabihin mo, yabang mo, no? I have my goods in Lazada, or I have a very good product. What if you don't know how to market for people to get to know your product? So yun nga, access to market. That's the problem. Most MSMEs, they have a hard time finding buyers domestically and internationally also. If, for example, they want to export their goods. So issue yan with skills, no? Yung next pala is productivity and efficiency. Sometimes, no, and that's related also to access to finance, no? Sometimes the people you end up with, yung employees, no, they have low skills, low productivity. Sometimes you don't have enough money, access to finance ka, to get good supply, inputs mo, diba? For example, if you're an agribusiness, you don't have enough money to find the right agri products, or the seeds that you have. Ito, access to technology, wala kang pera, so you can't buy state-of-the-art machinery, therefore your output is not optimal. Hindi ka as productive as, say, large firms who can buy the state-of-the-art machinery. So that affects your productivity and efficiency. And then lastly, you're vulnerable. If you're a micro, small, medium enterprise, you're vulnerable to shocks. Shocks is a general term economists use for external crisis, crisis events. So ito, pandemic. This pandemic is a unique shock kasi this doesn't happen often, once in a lifetime for most of us. Usually, yung mga bagyo, storms, typhoons, yung Typhoon Ondoy, for example, no? Well, micro, small, and medium enterprise are more susceptible because if they close, for example, in this pandemic, they close shop, they can't afford not to have customers, for example, for a long period of time. The Ayalas, the San Miguel's, they can absorb losses. Pero itong mga to, no, they don't have a lot of bandwidth to absorb losses. So you see, no, later on, you'll see the statistics. A lot of MSMEs had to close either permanently or temporarily. Kasi wala, no customers, no revenues, they're suffering losses. So these are the major barriers to realizing potential. So what now is government strategy? So ito, the DTI, the Department of Trade and Industry, the secretary came up with the 7 M's to develop MSMEs. I really respect, he's one of my favorite cabinet secretaries. My two favorites are the DA secretary, Secretary Dar, and Secretary Mon Lopez of Department of Trade and Industry. He was really in the private sector. He used to head an enterprise called, an organization called Go Negosyo, or Philippine Center for Entrepreneurship. They used to train and mentor MSMEs. So he was a perfect man for the MSME job. So he has this. So really, really deep experience in the private sector. Let's start with money, kasi access to finance. So sabi nga nila, government really has to focus, and he's trying to do that now, on financing, how to actually provide more loans to the private sector, how to convince the private sector, the financial institution to lend more money, and not to be scared of the MSMEs. Or we can develop alternative financial institutions that will lend to the MSMEs. So meron nga ngayon, actually, no, as a way to counter the 5-6, no, which is what a lot of MSMEs resort to. Kasi ayaw nga ng banks. No? So there's this government entity called Small Business Corporation, and small businesses can borrow cheaper loans, no, with lower interest rates provided by the government. Or they can guarantee, no, their loans, no, through another agency called PhilGuarantee, government agency as well. Let's go to machines now, no? Clockwise tayo. Yun. Now, if you have money, then you can buy machinery that can boost your production if you're into processing. No? So if you're a small coffee shop, if you can have the money, or you can buy the state-of-the-art roasting facility or brewing machinery. So you can be more productive. You can innovate. So the government actually has programs where they can lend you. You don't have to buy, no? You can borrow, or they have what they call shared service facilities in the regions. No? And DOST, they can help you with innovation, with borrowing machines from them, or infusing technology. If you go to Cultura, for example, no, you see good packaging of mga products. More often than not, they were supported by DOST. You'll see the logo of the Department of Science and Technology there. Provide you with machines, with technology, with innovation. So you can better sell. Kasi sometimes optics lang yan, no? Sometimes the products are the same, the quality. Pero sometimes people buy the ones that have better packaging kasi eye candy. No? Ganda tignan. Markets, no? Sabi nila, government wants to help MSMEs sell their products, not just on the shelves, but even e-commerce, and also trade outside for those especially who want to trade outside, export. Yeah, we can take advantage of trade agreements. Kasi for example, ASEAN, no, our ASEAN countries, we can sell to them tariff-free. I discussed before, no, yung concept of tariff. No? They're basically taxes on imports. Ngayon, virtually, Vietnam or Thailand can sell us their goods at the same price as they sell in their home countries kasi walang tariffs, walang patong na taxes. So same deal, we can actually export to other countries they will not charge us tariffs or taxes. So nagkakalabanan na lang sa quality. So that's another thing. So government wants to make sure that they're helping us or MSMEs market as long as you have a good product, which can help when you have the right machinery and when you have the adequate, and of course infrastructure, no, to connect businesses to their markets. Kasi kung pangit kalsada or shipping is bad, then it's hard to find buyers or to sell your products. Models, ito, government wants to inspire, no, MSMEs, no, with the right models, yung mga successful models, that they can use, no, ma-inspire sila to copy the successful models. Mindset, sabi ng government, oh, we want to challenge MSMEs to be more ambitious. Think big, no? Be more productive, think big, wag lang domestic market, think exports, think bigger. And mindset also applies to government mindset. Different agencies, how do you coordinate to help MSMEs? Mastery, ayun din. So government wants to provide additional support for skills training, to provide you with the models na for you to master things, or send you on study tours outside, invite experts from outside to train MSMEs, etc., etc. So meron. So government has what they call Philippine International Training Center, and they host some skills training seminars as well. Mentoring, that's the last thing. So yun nga, they see sometimes, no, MSMEs benefiting from being mentored by the successful ones, big brothers. So government has a large-scale mentoring program, no, done in the regions through the Go Negosyo Centers, or here in Manila, no, they have a lot of seminars. No? So the successful big brothers like your Joey Concepcion, your Ayalas, no, they invite to mentor the small ones, the struggling ones. Kasi to troubleshoot, saan ba siya nagkakaproblema, then maybe they can suggest measures. So that's the 7Ms, government strategy. And if eventually you'll have your own startup, there are lots of government programs that you can take advantage of. Ito, just going further on the strategies and the goals, as an offshoot of the 7Ms and on the barriers. No? Think of these strategies of government as a flip side of these, no, the barriers. So, government wants improved business climate. Yun na, no, yung government bureaucracy, less cumbersome procedures for getting permits. So streamline dapat. Streamline means shorten time steps. Just make it easier, no? Not to be burdensome. Kasi sometimes, you know, and this has happened in the past, no? Government requires a lot, so some people with really good business ideas end up not just pursuing it. Wag na lang. Sayang. That could add to employment sana, di ba? Or add to GDP. Improve access to finance. Yun nga, government wants to simplify requirements, convince banks to lend more, and promote alternative sources of collateral or kinds of financing streams. So they're working on that now. Yun nga, skills training, as I mentioned. Yung mastery and mentoring. As I told you, government also wants to improve access to technology innovation. DOST has some programs here, so does DTI. You go to the countryside, to the rural areas, DTI has what they call shared service facilities, where you don't, well, MSMEs don't have to buy their own equipment. Sometimes DTI can provide that. And it's shared, no? So you can go to that facility, and other MSMEs can also share that facility. So for example, in one of the regions I visited in Benguet, they have a coffee processing facility. So those coffee farmers who want to roast their coffee or process their coffee, they can share in that shared service facility, sometimes for free or for a fee, small fee. So, and then yun nga, improve access to market. Government wants to help uh, MSMEs do e-commerce or sell outside, abroad, or just sell, no, domestically. And they also have events, no, like expos. You go to Mega Trade Hall, no, DTI always has those expos, no, regional fairs, etc. So they want to help MSMEs sell to more customers. And what we see right now, no, the MSMEs are really suffering, no, during this pandemic. As I told you, MSMEs are the most vulnerable to the pandemic. Obvious, no? Kasi you're a small guy. No? Sometimes they only earn enough revenues for the week or for the month. So talagang they really suffer. Based on the statistics I shared with you, no? Based on statistics, studies, surveys done by ADB, World Bank, UN, more than 70% of MSMEs actually faced temporary or permanent shutdowns. And up to now, nearly half remain closed. And unfortunately, with closure comes layoffs. No? So so we had a lot of staff reductions, unemployment went up. So that's really the downside. Kasi nga, 99.5% of all businesses are MSMEs. And what did they say they needed? So they requested government of greater access to credit, sana funding to tide them over, not to expand, but to tie them over. A tax break sana, no? Don't pay tax muna, deferred loan payment sana. And to a certain extent, government also responded. Although some sectors are saying it's not enough in terms of the kinds of products or services government provided or the extent, no? The size. So what has government done? Again, government has done something. But again, it's a question mark whether have they done enough. Has it been sufficient? So yun nga, what are some of the four main things, no? And government during the pandemic, Congress passed two important laws, no? They were signed by the president into law. So there are two succeeding versions of the Bayanihan to Hilas 1 Act. So it's Bayanihan 1, Bayanihan 2. So under both, and different sizes, no, they were called the stimulus packages. So one is direct loans. So the affected MSMEs were eligible, no, to get loans from government. In many cases, interest free. Through what I mentioned, no, the SB Corp, Small Business Corporation, which is good. So to tide them over. So para hindi na sila forever mag-shutdown. Uh, Number two, loan moratorium. No? So this is good, no? Not just for businesses, but even for individuals who have outstanding loans to credit cards or to banks, no? Loans directly to banks. Moratorium just means you don't have to pay now. You'll have to pay in the next 60 days. So postponement, which is good because it also helps MSMEs tide them over kasi less pressure to pay back loans. And guarantee covers also. No? So at the same time, kasi banks kasi, if you don't present collateral again, no? Collateral is the thing that you promise the bank. Uh, it's basically the object that you tell the bank, no, oh, in case I default, you'll get this. No? Usually a piece of land, real property. So in lieu of a collateral, banks can lend to you, are more confident in lending to small businesses if there's a guarantee cover. And the good thing is government has an agency that does that, Phil Guarantee. So yun nga, so the Bayanihan bills boosted the guarantee abilities or capability of Phil Guarantee to cover loans that MSMEs get from the bank. So now the banks are more willing. So that's another way by which they were able to help MSMEs. government. Tax credit as well. This is good, no? Just to explain to you, no, the Department of Finance actually agreed to tax credits. So just to explain this further, so most companies, no, when they earn a profit for this year, for example, for 2020, whatever profit they have, a portion of that they will have to pay in taxes next year. So, for example, here's a small business, no, Jay's restaurant. If, for example, I have to pay, no, I have to pay taxes, for example, no, next year, uh, 10 million pesos. Kunyari, I have to pay, I owe the government 10 million in taxes. Eh, during the pandemic, no, I suffered tremendous losses. I operated at a net loss. Alam niyo na sa accounting yung loss and profit. No? So this year was so bad, I operated at a net loss. So my net loss was 5 million pesos. If it's a tax credit, I owe the government 10 million, no? I can actually deduct the loss I incurred 5 million pesos to that 10 million. So 5 million na lang babayaran. So it's crediting the loss you have for next year or the future years. No? So for example, I lost ko ngayon and then I make a profit in 2021. The tax I have to pay the government in 2022 on the profit I made in 2021, I can deduct the losses I incurred in 2020 for the taxes I have to pay eventually. So that really helps MSMEs kasi parang, oh, that's good, no? That's like giving them money kasi it's a tax credit, no? They don't have to pay that money. Therefore, they can keep that money. So that helps them in the long run. And the last thing that government did is wage subsidy for the workers of MSMEs. For those who wanted to close for a while, the government, this is indirect by the way, the government actually did not provide assistance to the companies, but to the workers in the companies. And that indirectly helps the companies because the workers don't have to leave and find other jobs. The government gave them money, mga 8,000 din yata per month, to tie them over so that companies can keep them even while they're closed. So it's also indirectly helping. All right, any questions before we devote the last half hour to Module 5? So far, so good. I mean, especially for Module 4, no? It's really agrarian reform, and public finance discussion that were more complex. Population demography and MSME development, they're kind of straightforward. So a lot of probably some new concepts, no? But they're more straightforward than the first two topics under Module 5. So Module 5 is the last module. Again, in Canvas, it's only 3 pages, actually 2, with 1 page as a discussion board. So I want this to synthesize, no? and to do full circle. What do I mean by full circle? Kasi we discussed in Module 1, we ended by discussing the role of the private sector. Eventually, you guys, most of you will be involved. 99.5% of you will be involved in the private sector eventually. We ended Module 1 with the role of the private sector business in the SDGs. And I want to end with that, cut the course with that, by understanding more and hopefully inspiring you more with some models and some examples. So I will start with a very good concept called shared value. And along the way, we will distinguish what is known as corporate social responsibility, CSR, which some of you are already very familiar with. That's noble, that's good in most cases, but it's not the same as shared value. And I'll explain that. I will try to, 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 to see examples where business can really make money, but at the same time solve social problems. And I'll just flash the final discussion board in Canvas. And please do not give me a CSR, corporate social responsibility example for that discussion. All right. I hope you're able to read the Porter and Kramer article. If not, no, you still have time this week. There's a good TED Talk by Michael Porter. He's a good speaker, one of the well-respected management gurus in Harvard Business School. Most of the management techniques, competitive advantage, value chain, actually came from Michael Porter. He was really all about management and business before. But eventually, he saw the intersection of business and development in the social sector. So what is shared value? Shared value at its essence really is addressing a social issue with a business model. It's in Canvas, I define this, and it's mainstreaming. It's not trying to solve a poverty, let's say, or a development issue. Separate from your business process. So while you're doing something in your business, you're already addressing. And later on, I will elaborate. Kaya nga it's distinct from corporate socialism. It's not philanthropy. It's not necessarily just doing good. Hindi siya donation. No. By operating your business in a particular manner, you're actually already addressing a social issue by the way you do your business. So in addressing a social issue, I stole screenshots from the TED Talk. These are some of his slides. That's shared value at its essence. It's creating value, expanding the pie, no? Hindi lang siya economic pie, but there's growing the economic value and growing the social value at the same time. So it's shared value. It's not just economic profit, and you share it with other people. And it's not tipong CSR nga, it's CSR kasi is, there's a surplus, no? There's a surplus value in the economic side. Oh, I will provide that in the social side. So it's transferring, distributing. No, here, no. You expand value in both dimensions at the same time. So, I also took a screenshot of the article. So, there are three ways, no, by which you can combine, you can tweak your business so that they solve social issues, social problems. So ito, we'll go through three, no? Three yan. By reconceiving products and markets, by redefining productivity in the value chain, and by enabling local cluster development. So we'll discuss each of them. So the first one, reconceiving products and markets. Ito, there's this famous Indian economist, or I don't know if he was an economist or a business person. He coined the term, there's fortune at the bottom of the pyramid. Basically, before, the corporate sector, the business sector, saw that, no, let's target the affluent class. Sila may pera, let's target the richer folks because they have money. Now, they're now rethinking that. No, actually, you can target the lower class, the poor, the marginalized, those who don't necessarily have access. There's money to be made. The classic example here in the Philippines is the sachet economy. Oh, at the same time that you're enabling people to get quality products, let's say Procter and Gamble, no? Soap, shampoo, uh, deodorant, you're making money as well. You know, the companies that distribute products in sachets, they're addressing a need. Kasi yung need na yun is for the poor to get, let's say, shampoo, soap, kailangan yun eh. But at the same time, the corporations are making money. So that's shared value kasi you're addressing two things at the same time. You're making profit, and profit is not bad, no? At the same time, you're providing value. And see, nakikita nila, there's a market for it. You can make money by focusing on the bottom of the pyramid, which is, the lower classes. Another example, low-cost housing. There's a group called 8990 Holdings. They focus on socialized housing, pero decent, no? Not exploitative, not substandard. No? So, they keep developing low-cost housing condominiums na decent. So, it's a win-win. No? They can make money, but at the same time, they're addressing a need. For the poor, they need socialized housing. They need housing that's decent, but cheap, cheaper. O kayo naman, can someone give me an example?
Sir, can you repeat the question? I was kind of choppy again.
Give me an example of reconceiving products and markets. Creating shared value by reconceiving products and markets. A local or even an international example or from the article. A good example of fortune at the bottom of the pyramid. Your target market is the poor or the those who lack access, but you're making money.
Sir, could you argue that um, basic needs, like basic necessities, are product reconceiving products and markets, like rice? I'm not sure, sir.
Rice, again, the concept of shared value is you're addressing a problem. So if it's selling basic necessities, if you are, let's say, addressing lack of access of a particular group, and then not out of charity, but we're also making money or making at least a decent profit, then that's shared value. So it's not just selling rice, but it's ensuring that rice gets to your selling rice, let's say quality rice at a cheaper price to a certain group that has difficulty accessing rice, then that's shared value.
Oh, sir, I
It's
think
addressing a problem.
sorry. I think I have an answer, sir.
Sige,
Um,
go
Possibly,
ahead.
I think one project is like, because I heard this from my sibling who works, uh, um, something about like bringing like digital banking or like a way of banking to fisher folk, because they don't have much
Yeah.
access to any they don't have much access to any banking facilities, so they try to create like any form of banking through technology. And basically, like if in a sari store you can like utang there. So I think that's one.
Yeah, yeah, that's a perfect example. And um, that is a good example internationally. Cell phone companies, they started targeting actually the poorer segments. Uh, and even the digital banks, no, they started seeing. And yeah, I saw actually I saw just recently BDO, no, BDO now. Of course, BDO makes money. They now are enabling sari-sari stores to become cash agents. So what will happen is, in a far-flung community, these people don't have to travel to withdraw money from an ATM by BDO, from BDO. No? They can go to that sari-sari store who is now an agent and withdraw money, of course, for a fee. So that's addressing a need. Of course, there's debate whether that's exploitative, pero hindi naman siguro kasi people won't pay extra money naman if it's too high. So it's addressing an unmet need, but at the same time, you're making money. So ganun din, no? Digital, kasi you're providing digital and they will pay eventually to use it, but you're addressing a need, a digital divide. So cellphone, ganun din. No? So yung mga tingi din, again, going back to the sachet economy, the Sun Cellular has targeted the lower segments, no? Or free load, free talk and text for a month for only 50 pesos or 100 pesos. So that's addressing a need, communications, but at the same time making money. Unmet need yun before, kasi before 0917, Globe lang, postpaid, mayabang, di ba? And the prepaid actually enabled that. No? So yun nga, it's not just selling a basic need. It's addressing, solving an unmet need while making money without exploiting them, of course. And marami din examples of solar panels. No? There's a company selling solar panels in Palawan kasi Palawan, maraming off-grid dyan. They can't be connected to the main grid kasi nga, islands. So, madami. You can think of examples. Or let's go to the next. No? Just let me know if you want me to elaborate more. Redefining productivity in the value chain. We talked about value chain before. No? So, yung value chain na naman, just think of the value chain of, again, yung coffee. Back to coffee. Coffee is the most cited example of a value chain in the development world. So, the value chain is like this. The commodity moves from one phase to another and it's transformed. That's basically value chain, and it goes to the customer. So, coffee, the value chain of coffee is from the bean, the inputs muna. The farmer gets seeds, etc. Then plants coffee. From the coffee, that goes to a processor. That's the next step in the value. The processor adds value by converting it to something else, by processing it into green bean coffee or roasted coffee. Then it goes to Starbucks that roasts it, or coffee bean. And then it goes to the supermarkets. Then it goes to a restaurant. Then it goes to customers. So that's the value chain. It's transformed into a different product and eventually reaches customers. So you can also address social issues, especially this is the perfect examples here are agribusiness. So the Kennemer example, which you saw in the agri part, in the discussion board, that's a good, perfect example of creating shared value by redefining productivity in the value chain. Kasi nga part of Kennemer's value chain sa cacao were the farmers. So they are not helping the farmers just purely out of goodwill. They're finding a way to help the farmers increase productivity, move to another crop, plant cacao, to support their business, which is to process chocolate, process cacao into chocolate, to sell to Mars. Kasi they source for Mars chocolate, which produces M&Ms, etc., etc. And they're solving an unmet need or a problem by helping the farmers realize increased incomes. So ito naman, in the example in the paper, no, in the article, Porter and Kramer article, on the distribution side naman, kasi part of the value chain distribution, let's say Amazon yata to, no? In the Philippines kasi, when you order in Lazada or Shopee, it's plastic mostly. Sa kanila kasi Amazon is mostly boxes. Sometimes plastic, but mostly boxes. They decided, no, there's a problem in the way most companies use packaging. No? That kasi it's wasteful. There's a lot of trees used. What about the waste going? The waste as a byproduct of the package. So they decided to minimize the packaging, thinner, lighter, etc., less use of paper. That's a win-win. They're addressing a problem which is pollution, cutting of trees, wastage, and they're making money by lowering their costs. So, ganun siya. Win-win also. And on the final side, no, kasi we talked about si Kennymer kasi, they're helping the input, the farmer side, the sourcing side. No? Yung isa naman, distribution. What about the distribution? Ito perfect dito yung mga Coke, no? Mga Coke, mga Pepsi. They're actually helping the sari-sari stores, no? Or they're helping address yung far-flung areas. They sponsor refrigerators. They help come out with better signages. They're helping sari-sari stores, but they're making money because distribution agents nila yun. Or financing also. So, unmet need, but at the same time, they're making money. They're profiting and benefiting. And that's not bad. Kami, right now, we have a project with Coke. Kami at USAID, we're partnering with Coke to help sari-sari stores deal with COVID, train them better, prepare their businesses for how to be ready for pandemic, to continue operating. But Coke is not, it's not out of goodwill lang. They will profit because it's their distribution chain. Coke relies heavily on distribution channels. Okay, yun naman, your turn. Give me a good example of creating shared value through this pathway, redefining productivity in the value chain. Preferably someone else. No? I mean, I welcome naman si Jerry participating, but other hands, sana. No example? Just one, just one. Just think. No? Ayaw nyo. Shy group tonight. Okay
Sir,
lang.
I
Sige.
can add.
Jerry again. Sige. Take one for the entire team. Okay.
I think one is well, this was based on like our interview with one of my friends, and because he handles a business. One thing is like he, instead of using yung mga plastic what do you call that, plastic containers to deliver his food, he uses eco tins instead, and I think because of that he also gets like a discount from his supplier because he always buys from them for his deliveries of food. I guess that can be one.
Yeah. Thank you. And that's good. No? That addresses different problems, the environment. And, that's good for his bottom line. Because remember, businesses can make money in two ways, no? they can get higher revenues or they can lower the costs or both. Diba? So if you're saving on costs, then you're generating bigger profits. So again, profit is not bad. Just don't exploit. Ganun lang naman. Ito naman, it's more active, no? Not passive. They're actually trying to solve social issues, unmet needs, social problems. The last, I'll explain what a cluster is. No? Kasi the third is, enabling local cluster development or helping gaps in the cluster. So a cluster basically, think Silicon Valley, no? Uh, it's basically an area, it's co-location of different firms in the same sector locating side by side or in one area. And sabi nga nila, that's really good because they benefit from talking to each other, copying, or getting the best technology, best knowledge, no? So kaya sinasabi nila, there's really value in locating with other people. Kaya nga also if you notice yung co-working spaces, kasi they're saying na, oh, because you talk to each other, you interact, you get value by just being with other people kasi you share knowledge, synergies, etc. So in the Philippines, no, I think Marikina before was known as the shoe cluster, no? Shoe capital of the Philippines. Kaya no more. No? Kasi there's a lot of shoe manufacturers that were side by side in Marikina, no? Located nearby in one area in Marikina. In Zamboanga, for example, no? It's the sardine capital. No? 10 out of the 11 canning companies actually are in Zamboanga City. In Cebu, no? Dried mango clusters, no? Guitar makers, no? Meron dyan in one area in Cebu. Bananas in Davao or dried mangoes in Cebu. Lechon in La Loma. No? This discussion is making me hungry. In Tagaytay, no? You see a cluster of bulalo makers, no? You drive through the main highway, puro bulalo, no? Whether it's a fancy restaurant or karinderya, no? Strip, just side by side, no? Go to Bulalo, go to Tagaytay, Batangas. Basically, that's a cluster. In Napa Valley, there's wine, no? So a cluster, for the most part, you see the finished products. You see them, you see the companies that produce the main goods. Pero in a cluster, ito kasi I was involved in a study in Brazil before, no? When I was working the World Cup. Footwear, think Havaianas, for example. No? There's a town called Cariri in Brazil. There's what we call a footwear cluster. So different footwear, different kinds of Havaiana companies, Havaianas-like companies operating, producing sandals and footwear. So marami doon. So it's not only the Havaianas, no? But within that area, there's an ecosystem. Kasi who supplies? Who provides the design? There's the laboratories who provides the printing, the packing. So there's an entire ecosystem. It's not only the Havaianas or it's not only the shoes in Marikina that are in that cluster, but there's a whole ecosystem. Ito yung mga lead, no? The main ones. Pero you have suppliers, service providers, logistics, etc., janitorial services, supporting agencies, universities. That's a cluster for you. It's the lead firms plus a whole ecosystem. So here's a good example of how shared value was created through cluster development. Usually this can be done by the big guys, the large companies, especially international. So I'll give you 1 minute to read this. So for example, Nestle, you guys know Nespresso. No? Fancy, good tasting coffee that's instant pero brewed, no? Really good quality, parang espresso siya, but instant. Comes in the capsules. So in Nestle, Problema, most coffee producing countries are the poor countries, especially Africa. But Africa produces the best coffee, no? Ethiopia, etc., etc., South Africa, Kenya, really good coffee, Congo even. So yeah, Nestle is sourcing really good coffee, but they see, no, there's gaps. Yeah, you have good lead firms, pero you may kulang ka. You don't have logistic firms, you don't have well mailing facilities, kulang ecosystem. So what do? They actually help develop those ecosystem. They fill in the gaps in the ecosystem. Not out of goodwill, no? They don't provide finance, let's say, to the farmers uh, to come up with milling facilities. No, they provide access so the farmers can actually earn more money, but at the same time, it's not doing good. No, they earn money kasi it helps their business. It helps them make sure that the entire ecosystem is functioning, walang gaps, so that these African countries can produce good coffee and they can sell to Nestle. They can supply to Nestle. So they can partner with different kinds of organizations, support them, support cooperatives, not out of goodwill. They can institute a coffee technology program in one of the leading universities, not out of goodwill, but it serves their own interests as well. So win-win yan. Diba? It also helps coffee producing clusters in poorer countries. Kasi nga, more jobs, more output, more facilities, more employment for the other stakeholders in that ecosystem. That's a very good example. Dito, no? So some coffee companies have started doing that. No? Or even, let's say, Unilab, no? Unilab, they sponsor technology programs in some universities, no? Kasi nga, they would want a steady supply of, kasi unmet need yun, eh. The cohorts for science, technology, ano. So they sponsor scholarships, etc., etc. Kasi they want to build the pipeline of would-be scientists na eventually would help them. So ganun yun, eh. So it's not necessarily doing good luck. It helps the business as well. So plugging in the gaps in the different areas. So yun. So by now, you're probably see, kasi CSR really is philanthropy. Oh, yan yung mga businesses that, oh, we have profit, we create a foundation, it gives laptops or builds school buildings. No, that is not integral to the business. CS operations. It's not philanthropy, it's not charity, it's not donation. A good way of viewing corporate social responsibilities, donation. And it's not necessarily sustainable kasi, oh, I donate, that's it, stop. CSV is more sustainable kasi the more you keep making profit, the more sustainable your business becomes. And if solving the social issues is integral to your business, then the more you can solve social issues. So that's CSR versus CSV. It's more transformative. It's more integral to the business. Ito lang naman dun sa um, second page of module 5. It's basically it provides a list of, when you talk about SDGs, there are opportunities when you're trying to solve, the SDGs, and there's a long list of that. So for example, in energy, water, renewable, there's money to be made, so companies can invest. Solar, yes. Water, access to water, there's money to be made as well. Schools, low-cost schools, Ayala is starting to do. Healthcare, yes, etc., etc. Agribusiness, yes. So you can definitely make money by solving. And profit, again, is not bad. So that's how I ended the course. Kasi kayo, especially you guys, I hope you try to imbibe these values, these philosophies. Kasi it will help you, it will help the society, you know, while you're making money. That's not bad. Eventually, you guys will be leading, will be executives maybe, and maybe find a way to solve society's problems by running profitable businesses and mainstreaming, integrating problem solving, social problem solving aspects in your business. So basically, I wanted you to provide a CSR, not a CSR, shared value example in the final discussion. Okay, so now I wanted to end the course. No, we talked about poverty. We started with poverty. We'll end with poverty and the SDGs. This is one of the. I just saw this a few days ago in Business World. It's hard, no? The problems will be worse because of the pandemic. So there will be a lot of social problems that your generation, my generation, your generation eventually will have to face and will have to solve. It will have it. The indicators, the SDGs are, the indicators might be worse. Definitely poverty, out of reach because of the pandemic. Not just the Philippines, but around the world. This is global. So we need everyone's help. So I wanted to close with this slide, last slide. You know, ako, admittedly, I haven't done, I did my internship in IBM, but other than that, I was never part of the private sector. Kayo, most of you will be part of the business sector. You can affect any change in any sector. You don't have to go direct to development. You don't have to go to NGO. Ako, I had this discussion with my best friend. He eventually worked for HSBC. Sabi ko, pre, sabi niya, pare, okay lang ba? Kasi corporate ako, masama yan. No? No, of course not. Corporate is not inherently bad. No? You can affect in any change. Sabi ko, paano yan? Kung lahat tayo pumasok sa NGO or development sector or government, paano na yung corporate? If tama nga na yung perspective is evil yung corporate. No, you can affect change. And especially if you want to change the way people do business in the literal sense, all the more that you should go to that field. You can affect any change in any sector. Ako, pumunta ako sa development my entire career. But now I'm an advocate for profit, making money, and at the same time solving problems. Siya, nag-HSBC, and he tried to do good there. So you can affect any change in any sector. That's why I kept trying to explore examples, models that you can learn from, and it hopefully inspire you. But if you're really interested, in shared value, in NGO, in the development sector, a few of my students in my other class already reached out to me. Keep in touch. I can give you also my personal email address because I might not be teaching in Ateneo forever. I can be a mentor to any of you. Feel free, no? Kasi ako, this is my advocacy. I want to invite students really to go into development, whether it's direct development or by joining business and doing good in the business sector. So some tips, never too early to start. You guys, while you're students, number one, really be conscious of what's going on. Read the news. My top choices are the boring ones kasi they're more objective. Manila Bulletin, Philippine Star, Business World, Business Mirror. Again, as I mentioned, be wary of pro-government, very pro-government outfits like Daily Tribune and Manila Times. On the other end, Philippine Daily Inquirer and Rappler tend to be anti-government naman, sometimes twisted. So yeah, be a critical reader. No? Don't readily believe, even though it's a mainstream outfit. No? Sometimes they twist it kasi anti-government or pro-government sila. So question it, validate, and especially what you see in social media. There's a lot of fake news now or slanted news. Participate hopefully in socially oriented organizations or maybe integrate in, let's say, yung mga AMA, AJMA, no? Integrate development principles in other organizations. Some of your officers in your in management organizations. If you want, you can participate in protests, street rallies, that's well and good. But after careful consideration, don't just join because people told you, it's the right thing. Judge for yourself. You're adults already. So by all means, participate, but after thinking about it. Integrate development objectives also in project ideas. Your fourth year, you're going to come up with your business concepts and business projects. Hopefully, you'll come up with an inclusive business, shared value business, inclusive business. They're all, in a sense, synonymous. So I hope you continue to read up on good examples. Revisit examples in this course, by all means. You can copy, you can ask me anytime after this. Take your NSTP classes seriously. Also be exposed to different communities, poor, if you're not really exposed to. Take public transportation, even if you don't have to. And lastly, avoid the messianic complex. You might think, I'm rich, I'm more powerful than them, I can save the world. No? Be a partner and help them without seeing them as less of you. And that's it. That's how I want to end the course. Any questions? I hope you found this course useful, and hopefully at least some of the modules and some of the topics interesting. And I hope you got inspired by some models, examples. I know some models were technical, were overwhelming. So I hope if you don't just if you forget everything, just don't forget shared value and the role of business in development. So before we end, I hope you can turn on your videos. I'm not forcing you. Let's try to take a class picture. Sorry talaga, I wanted to meet you guys in person, pero it is what it is. So I hope you guys can switch on your videos. If you're shy, no worries. Okay lang, no worries. Then I'll take a screenshot. Okay, I'll give you one more minute. Okay. Okay na? No more na nang habol. All right, that's good. More shy kayo than the other class. Yung kabilang class, isa lang hindi nagpakita. All right, so I'll do a print screen na lang. So, 1, 2, 3. Let me just check. All right, got it. All right, again, guys, thank you very much. Thanks for bearing with me. Thanks for your patience. Maraming salamat, guys. Don't forget tonight, 11:59 p.m. Maraming salamat. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, sir. Sir,
Thank you.
for the paper, one person per group lang magpapas
Sige,
naman, diba?
Andrew.
Tama ba, sir?
Yeah,
One
yeah.
Okay.
Just
Thank you,
one
sir.
person. Right, I think Gail's group wanted to confer with me. Sige.
Thank you, sir.
Sige. Thanks. Thanks, Andre, again, for being the middle. Okay, I thought Gail and company wanted. Kayo ba yon? Miguel and uh, okay. I wonder what happened to Gail. Anyway, I'll just wait.
Hello, sir.
Yes, Gail. I was wondering where you guys were.
Sir, my laptop died on me. I'm so sorry.
Okay lang, okay lang. Sige.
Sir, ano lang, yung question lang po namin is, what if there's no parang authors indicated in the article and it's a government paper naman? Do we just say DOF and then 2020?
Yeah. No worries. Oh.
Yeah. And also, sir, ano pala, I really want to share then like my insights then siguro about the course kasi I really wanted to connect then since actually kanina the discussion was like really good and it struck me talaga and especially this course actually while I was going through the modules. Currently, I'm an officer din po kasi in AMA and the reason
Okay.
why I'm staying in that org kasi AMA right now, like especially this year, is rebranding towards social entrepreneurship instead of entrepreneurship lang in general. And
Great.
yeah, and I also joined Habitat for Humanity Philippine, parang Blue Chapter, which is Habitat for Humanity, but then in Ateneo. And yeah, I really
Great.
enjoy social work, especially when I first knew about the coffee industry and actually it was at a lab talk by Somba and it's about the coffee industry and how farmers were like super lugi sila. Big corporations are paying them
Yeah.
10 pesos per kilo lang when instead they sell it for a much higher price. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you want to keep in touch, feel free. And if, for example, yung AMA would need mga resource speakers, I have contacts, no? So, you want, so feel free to reach out even after. And,
Wait,
and I'm
actually,
really happy that this course was useful. Okay yan.
yes, sir. Actually, in Habitat, meron kami, sir, upcoming social leadership talk and I'm lodge head for that. In AMA kasi, sir, it was the seed sessions. SE education siya. Yes.
Okay. That's good. That's good. You're what again sa AMA, Gail?
I am AVP for core projects and I'm planning to be,
Great.
I'm planning to run for vice president for business application, which is like the advocacy heart of like AMA.
Good. Yeah, good luck. Good luck. Good luck. Good luck.
Yes, sir.
And really, no, I'm happy that you found this course useful. Medyo mahaba lang yung modules, but I'm happy. Found it
Yes.
useful.
Yes, sir. That's it lang naman.
Okay. Sige, thanks a lot, Gail. Kain ka na.
Sir, I was actually eating when you called for recitation. That's why I really can't recite.
Okay, no worries, no worries, no worries.
Yes. Thank you, sir.
Sige, salamat. Thanks a lot, Gail.